Do you realize how sneaky Genshin's music team is? Because I don't understand the half of it, and I'm the one trying to convince you. On our agenda today, we have a music and Seelie theory. We'll be discussing Traveler and the Gnostic Hymn, then Dragons, the Shades, and the Hexenzircle. That's a lot, I know, but these are all inevitably linked. Believe me, the script was revised too many times to count, but I think I figured out how to organize it. You see, I constantly have many thoughts floating around my head cavity. Thoughts about several key motifs. The problem, though, was that I thought these were all separate trains. But Matlan is the beauty that finally cracked the code. In fact, 4 of these music ideas converged on this one theme, and I cannot wait to share it. Timestamps, references, corrections, etc. will all be linked in the description or a pinned comment below. Let's boogie! One of the most confounding riddles in Genshin is that of the Gnostic Hymn. The story told is full of cryptic imagery that we still know nothing about. Here's where I will quote Nicole to say, "What is seen is but an illusion." Rather, it's what we hear during this cutscene that matters, at least for the theory. The song Hymn of the Pearl is what I want to focus on. It's one of the most important music tracks we have, but what plays during the Battle Pass story is not the full song. See, those devious devs in Hoyo-verse split the song into at least 3 parts. The first missing piece is fairly easy to find, and that's what plays during Genshin's Travail preview. If you would be so kind as to ignore the themes of all the nations, just listen to the beginning and the end of this trailer. You'll notice immediately that both songs are conveniently played in the same tempo and style, a solo piano, and the motif that ties them together is a very simple low, high, low progression. In my opinion, these 3 notes identify the parted twins. Though brother and sister are the same, they're worlds apart. This is conveyed through the same note being played an entire key apart, because this Gnostic hymn is, in part, our story, our journey through Teyvat. Do you think it's a coincidence that it's in Matlan, Mualani's story quest, where we ponder the meaning of our journey? However, this melody doesn't only tell our story, but the purpose behind it. Why were the twins summoned to the world through means of the heaven's response? I believe the meaning is in the 3rd part of the song, Photon of Fluctuation. Teyvat's battle music is the missing part of our hymn. Let me give a brief breakdown of this music track's significance. It's well known that in every nation's battle music, one song will always use this motif. Not to mention character themes, but let's not go there today. What baffled me the most about this motif is its appearance in Apep's battle, the God-devouring mania. The difficult part was, however, deciding if this musical statement depicted the traveler's struggle or the world's plight. And by world, I mean the sovereigns. God-devouring mania is a track played during a struggle to save the formal Dendro sovereign. With this battle, dragons are now tied to this motif. By that logic, Ashtaha's battle could share this motif. Perhaps it does, but my non-pro musician brain hasn't been able to find it. But the difference between these 2 fights is the purpose of the fight and the sovereign status. With Apep, it's the battle where the life of a sovereign was in peril. A previous sovereign, but all the same. However, for Ashtaha, his life was never in contention, nor was he a sovereign. The reason for the fight was to quell and reseal the Lord of Vishaps, never to kill. Similarly, Dvalin's life was never threatened by our fight. He was just going a little cuckoo from tainted blood. Now, the name of this motif, Photon of Fluctuation, adds weight to this dragon connection. A photon is a massless particle of electromagnetic radiation and what comprises what we know as light. What race is from the light realm? Thus far, dragons, or rather Vishaps, are the only beings confirmed to be from the light realm. Yet I still haven't explained how the photon of fluctuation connects to the Hymn of the Pearl. And this is where Natlan ties it all together. Introducing the release of the region of Natlan, Hoyo-verse included a concert of 2 songs. As has been the pattern since Inazuma, one is the nation's theme, the other the nation's version of Photon of Fluctuation. The one for Natlan being titled Anthem of the Savannah. If you cross-compare all of Teyvat's Photon soundtracks, you will notice some things fundamentally different about Natlan's. The use of vocals and its repetitive nature. I cannot begin to tell you just how unlike Hoyo-MIX's style of repetition is, especially in longer songs. When a motif is repeated, it's normally separated by several other musical ideas. So why did they go out of their way to repeat one, and only one musical idea? That's because the idea conveyed is just that important. And in fact, this anthem contains all 3 parts of the hymn. From start to finish, the photon of fluctuation is what paces the entirety of the song, again and again, repeating on a loop. But it wasn't until I realized the significance of the other half of the theme that my brain snapped into hyperfocus. The other repeating motif overlaid is our low-high-low melody, the one used for the twins and the Battle Past hymn, only this time it's played fast. Just listen to what I mean. Low, low, high, low, low, high, low. When you really listen to Natlan's anthem, these are the only 2 musical ideas present. Then consider the lyrics. To those who look into the future, song of the light, fire of the night. The light and fire bestowed to us. They make a distinction between light and fire, likely because they're not exactly the same thing. Honestly, light could refer to any number of things, however, this is Natlan's Photon song. It's their battle for future of light and fire, dreams and wishes, dragon and man. And this hero that will rise like the dawn is the traveler, shining bright like the sun. Yet, the fun doesn't end there. When we consider Genshin's songs with vocals, we find them in places like lands that Seelies have touched or died, landmarks where divine beings have fallen, an old sovereign city, a dragon's sanctuary, an orphanage under the care of an Oceanid, contending with harbingers, and all over Natlan's original soundtrack. Natlan aside, what do all these areas have in common? It's the presence of the divine or divine power. Seelie, shades, and even dragons. If you don't think dragons count for divine, well, their thrones are what make up the current power of the 7. So there. Oceanids too were made by the second heart of the primordial sea, Egeria. They're practically honorary Seelie. And if you're wondering about the harbingers, no sweat. Their authority comes from the Tsaritsa herself. When describing the harbinger's power, the use of authority gives me the impression that the Tsaritsa may have divided the power of her gnosis among the harbingers. We won't really know until next year, methinks. So then, what if we include music from the land of dragons? Not only is the nation a place where Saurians live, but it's also a land protected by the Lord of Night, yet another Seelie. However, the vocals in Natlan and the Night Kingdom are done in 2 different styles, and the current Saurians aren't of divine status. So if the Night Kingdom is done in divine style, without lyrics, what's going on in Natlan? As an advocate of dragons, I want to go off the rails a bit to suggest a different interpretation. All vocals suggest dragon presence. The fact that Natlan uses lyrics rather than just humming signifies that these dragons are still living, still fighting for survival. This is where all practical reasoning ends and the hypothetical begins. You have been warned. Now, while I was perusing the descriptions in the Obsidian Codex set, the impression I got about the Age of Dragons was that their lands resided on floating masses. Instantly, I was reminded of a certain floating island. But that's crazy, right? Like, Celestia is what's implied to be the floating island. But what if they were the same? There's much to cover, so I will summarize the best I can to not waste time. Let's start from the bottom of the hierarchy, shall we? You cannot deny that Seelie are dragon-like, from their love of treasure to their connection with song. Nabumalikata, for instance, teaches Rukkhadevata a song very close to the source song, and her children are light-aligned. Like the Pari, they can channel the Kamvarana that repels the abyss, because the Void Realm is the natural enemy of the Light Realm. And 2, the Jinn are used in Deshret tech, which mostly uses holograms, a purely light-based interface. And then with the Lord of the Night, she's synced to this dragon radio station, a device very similar to the one in Tenyu Vale. When you think about it, Capitano tried to accomplish something similar to Ling Yuan. The dragon descendant, known as Bluey, was altering the spirit waves through the Jade Tower. And Capitano, too, was trying to factory reset Natlan's entire ley line system with a stone microphone. Along with Miss Nightlord also knowing how to alter ley lines, though she needed help from Ranova due to the sheer scale of the task. Now, take a quick detour through Simulanka. The minigame, Owl Musician, is a battle trial based on a story. In summary, during a monster invasion, a dark night fell upon the land, but the owls guided the warriors since they could see through the dark. If you play Star Rail, you might say these owls could be nightingales. But really, either works, since both are birds that sing throughout the night. As often as owls have come up in Genshin, they have to mean something. But with the summer event labeling them as night guides, the Night Lord in Natlan being a Seelie, and Seelie being guides, it makes it pretty clear for me. I'd say the Seelie's original form was a cross between a Nachtreben and a horned owl-like creature. Osvaldo should be receiving some intense side-eye right now. Next up are the Shades. You see, the respectful way that Miss Nightlord speaks about Ranova gives me the impression that Shades were always the overseers of Seelie. And if Seelie are angels, then that would make the Shades something like archangels, right? Actually, there's an excellent theory that talks about the ancient text used on Mona's scryglass. The point relevant to the theory is the 4 sets of 3 letters. If you regard each of these sets as an acronym for the names of 4 archangels, could these be the original names of the 4 Shades? You can watch the video to see the breakdown. However, this might explain why the Shades aren't fond of their current names. Ranova and Istaroth might be a badge of shame. But speaking of birds and angels, Ranova was the one who created Kapatcir. And in another video, Kapatcir was my top candidate for the Electro Sovereign. Overall, my stance remains as I think Seelie and dragons are nearly the same. But instead of being a prior, full-fledged sovereign, it's more likely that Kapatcir is an entity similar to Scylla, an elemental being with the potential of being a sovereign. Yet, rather than a natural manifestation like Scylla, she was created for the purpose of protecting the leyline tree, Thunderbird's Perch. Similar to how Rukkhadevata shaped the Simurgh from Malikata's power for protecting the Vorokasha Oasis. So sorry for the mental gymnastics. My point is, Seelie are dragon-like, both in purpose and qualities. And by extension, the Shades are too. So then the opposite should also be true of dragons. The feather, root of the spirit marrow, from the Obsidian Codex has this to say. A feathered accessory made an imitation of an ancient dragon's wing. It's a minor detail, but one that suits the angel imagery. Between Dvalin, Kukasaurus, the consecrated red vulture, and Arlecchino's 2 forms, we get a pretty good picture of what these dragon pinions look like. Though Arlie might be Seelie-coded, I think her second form is likely to be dragon-based. After all, besides those that are born in Natlan and Nahida, Arlie is the only other character that has halftone effects in her kit, and it's looking like the dragon era was a highly advanced digital age. These ancient dragons were divine, winged or flying, angel-like beings from the light realm. Finally, we need to talk about Paimon. If you're confused about why, then you haven't seen my theory where I made a pretty dang good case for her being Istaros Fragment. Paimon has been described as many things, but for the topic at hand, look at 4 of them. Seelie, God of Slimes, Bird, and Dragon. Now, it sounds like the lazy answer, but I believe the truth is that she's all of those. As Istaros Fragment, Shades are higher Seelie, so that checks out. Seelie in turn are night guides, which checks the bird box. But on the other side of this flapjack, she has a love of song and an obsession of gold. And if Paimon is a dragon, as Lanoir claims, then being a god of slimes is like saying she's in a position over other elemental creatures. It fits the bill. No, I'm not okay. But I think this is why Pai's true nature is so ambiguous. Turns out, Paimon is Paimon, is the simplest and truest answer she can give. There's just one minor kink with this thought. Were this all true, what does this mean for the Usurper and the war that overthrew the Sovereigns? Now, this could be a me thing, but the use of Usurper really bothers me. While perhaps not always the case, a usurper is most often someone from within a ruling governance that seizes the top seat by force. A coup d'etat of sorts. One who understands the ins and outs of the current system and takes control by putting those loyal to them in existing positions of power. 7 sovereigns, 7 archons. Do you get what I'm implying? I think the Usurper was either a Seelie or a dragon. Probably a Seelie. You see, just as dragon-based energy is 2 parts, like how Archie is Pneuma and Osea, I think Seelie are like the Osea side of the governance, and the Sovereigns are the Pneuma side. 'Cause we're dealing with light here. As A says, lightning will cast a shadow. But don't get me wrong, shadow is not the same as the abyss, since both dragons and Seelie frequently oppose the abyss. This usurper could be a Seelie who convinced the 4 shades that sovereign rule was harmful to humankind, causing them to pity man and overthrow the dragons. Alternatively, I believe there is a fell dragon at play. Perhaps Nibelung himself, either before or after he made contact with the abyss. Though it doesn't match timelines we have, I find it more likely that it's Nibelung with the power of the abyss, since contact with the abyss is corrosive and addictive. Maybe you have some ideas on this, but this is a topic for another time. My brain capacity is already maxed out here. With all that said, why is it significant that the Land of Dragons and Heroes uses the Hymn of the Pearl, a musical statement that links the Gnostic hymn, twins, dragons, and battle all together? It's that the travelers were summoned for the purpose of saving the light, the dragons. In doing so, restoring balance to the world. And this is where the Hexenzircle comes in. 'Cause the more I know about Alice and her gal pals, the more I see dragons. For instance, during the second Wind Bloom with Sucrose, we were told that the gals regularly meet for tea on a floating island. Dragon lands, maybe? The event did give us a floating island, but what if that was a big fat red herring? What if the floating island was actually a piece of Celestia? And what if Celestia was once dragon lands? 'Cause like Alice and Klee are likely dragonkind, like the Vidyadra. Nicole might be a Seelie that can't resist guiding the lost. Barbaloth taught Mona how to use her scryglass that has archangel names on it. Rhine-daughter is a Conrian that makes dragons as a side hobby. And Anya wrote an entire story for the sake of changing Durin's fate. I'm convinced that the purpose of our journey is to save dragons and Seelie, thus saving the world and all the people in it. And really, Traveler already has the track record for it. Dvalin, Ajdaha, Sangonomiya's people, Vision Holders, Nahida, Fontanians, and Natlan. The Traveler has helped every single one. Everywhere I look, everything comes back to dragons. And I believe that the nation of dragons being the land of heroes means exactly this. Well, viewer, now that I have thoroughly wasted your time, I hope you at least gleaned some ideas from this venture. After all, I was tossing hypothetical salad left and right, so don't take me too seriously. For my part, if there's a long shot involving dragons, that's always gonna be the path I take. It's nothing personal. But before I go, here's a tiny music theory for you. Xinyan is from Yilong Wharf. The song that plays during her archipelago cutscene and the track Through Clouds and Rivers use the same elements. And this single track only plays in this harbor, meaning that the duet she plays was a song she heard as a child living in Yilong. Bet you didn't expect that. This has been Senor Kraken. Okay, bye.